Well, let's get you more on these protests in Libya. Jalil Hashawi is a researcher and an expert on Libya. He joins us today. Thanks very much, Jalil, for speaking to France 24. I'd like to get from you, first of all, how you explain this attack on Libya's parliament. Is it because it's a symbol of the division, particularly the political division in the country?
Well, first of all, the parliament incident, although serious, is not the only incident. There have been incidents across the entire nation in the West, in the South, in the center. And the parliament, what happened to the parliament, the fact that it was broken into and parts of it were burnt and documents were stolen is, of course, symbolically very powerful. And it is true that the legitimacy of that parliament has been running thin, particularly given the aggressiveness of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Aqila Saleh, has been one of the most, if probably the most indefatigable opponent to the elections. He has been one of the reasons, not the only one of the reasons the elections didn't happen in December 2021. And this year he has been also quite visible and vocal in terms of always blocking what could have been a possible path to the elections, for instance. So he has drawn interest. He's not very popular. And in Tobruk itself, we saw a movement. Part of that movement is actually made of loyalists to Gaddafi, and it strikes the imagination. And it's very difficult for Aqila Saleh now to find an argument or find a narrative to kind of stage a comeback. It's a tough blow.
I mean, you've given us, some information there, Jalil, on the political side of things. I guess it would depend on where you are in Libya, what your needs are. But is it fair to say that economic woes in the country are affecting the majority of Libyans?
Absolutely. It's the main preoccupation. Even if the problems vary from one place to another, you could summarize what has happened this year as a deterioration in daily conditions. And you've had multiple reasons. Food prices have been going up. Fuel shortages have become more frequent. Of course, you correctly mentioned the importance of electricity outages that everybody is suffering from. All Libyans that I know, regardless of where they live, have been absolutely obsessed with this suffering, especially given the heat of this particular summer. And that explains some of the timing. And you have also other issues like, difficulty to find banknotes at the bank and so on and so forth. But you're right, the electricity outage issue has been front and center. And a lot of it has to do with a voluntary blockade. For example, in the east, the electricity outages would probably have been avoided if a politically motivated blockade hadn't blocked the entire hydrocarbon industry, including the extraction of natural gas.
I mean, many countries now are feeling the direct impact of what's going on in Ukraine currently. How is that playing out in Libya, Jalil?
It's not the primary reason, but it's definitely one of the reasons. And it's very ironic because Libya, as you correctly pointed out, is a very wealthy country. So, for example, without those political sources of dysfunction, without the infighting, and without the oil blockade, I really insist on the importance of the oil blockade. Right now, Libya could be exporting an additional 900,000 or 800,000 barrels a day. We're talking about 100 million euros thrown out the window every single day. So what I mean is that Libya has the wealth to avoid the food price issue in its own soil, but it's now suffering perhaps more than much poorer countries like Sudan or Tunisia or Morocco.
I mean, many Libyans were full of hope. If we think back to 2011 events there, of course, not all of the country, but there was a side of, people looking for change and moving forward from events of 2011. Is that hope still there now, given in 2022 there is this ongoing turmoil?
Obviously, the psychology is very different from 2011, but I would also point out that we are talking about different people. It's a different generation. The people in the street today, by and large, were just children in 2011. So we should not be naive as to think that it's the same person being pro-revolution in 2011 and now changing their mind and becoming more pro-Gaddafi or nostalgic about the past in general. When a young person is nostalgic about a period that they don't even remember, we should just view it as anger. It's not necessarily a formed opinion about that particular era, because, as I said, these are very young people who didn't really participate in the revolution in 2011.
All right.
Different people.